What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In this video today, we're going to learn how to build a professional authentication system for our web application using Descope. So let us get right into it. Alright, so we're going to build a web application in this video today that uses React for its frontend, Python Flask for the backend, and Descope for the authentication system. Now, Descope is the sponsor of this video today. They basically have this platform where you can easily, but also professionally design authentication systems, and then you can easily integrate them into React in the front end, into Python Flask in the back end, without any problems. And this is what we're going to do in this video today. Everything I do here is free. You don't have to pay any money. You don't have to sign up for any subscription model. If you want to follow along with this video, you can see here when you go to their pricing page, they have this free forever tier, which is exactly what I'm going to use in this video today. I don't have any special account. I'm going to use this same tier that you can use here without paying any money. So if you want to get started with that, just go to descope.com, and here we're going to sign up for a new account. Now, in my case, I already have an account. All I'm going to do is I'm going to sign into that account. The sign up process is very trivial. You can just use a Google account or GitHub account and you're already in. Once you're logged in, you will see this developer Descope console here. And what we want to do here is we want to go to getting started, and we want to create a new application or a new authentication system. The first question is, who uses your application? Let's go for consumers. Then which authentication methods do you want to use? Now, we can use multiple here. I'm going to just go with a simple social login. And then when I click next, it's going to ask which method do you want to use for multi-factor authentication. And here I can choose a secondary method now, maybe a one-time password and OTP. And then I can see here what's going to be created. So I'm going to just click next. It's going to generate the flows. And here now you can see the different flows: sign in, sign up, or sign in. Of course, if you have multiple authentication methods, you're going to see multiple of those, for example, biometrics or something. And you can explore this here now in the sample app. We can click then on customize. I'm not going to do anything here. There are countless customization options here that you can see. We're going to focus on the integration into React and into Python Flask. But what I want to show you here first is how easily and how intuitively you can actually change the flows of the authentication. So we can go here to flows in the left sidebar, and we can click, for example, on sign up or sign in, which is one flow. I can click on this, and you can see here now we have this mind map-like structure where we basically have the starting point of the process of the workflow, and then you can see exactly what happens. We see a welcome screen, we have the auth, then it's asking, is this a new user? Yes or not, yes or no. And then depending on what the result of this is, we have different branches here of this flow. So for example, if it's an existing user, we want to calculate the risk. So is this a risky, a suspicious behavior? If it's high risk, do something else. If it's low risk, do something else. So if it's high risk here, we're doing the multi-factor authentication. So we're sending an SMS, we're verifying this one-time password, we're verifying the code, and then we move on to the process. Now I can also, and this is the good thing now about this flow type of thing here in Descope, if I want to always go for the one-time password, I can just take this connection here, I can delete it, and I can drag it up here. So in this case, like this. In this case now what happens is, no matter what the risk is, if it's an existing user, it's always going to ask for the one-time password. And I can change here whatever I want. I can move things around, I can change connections, and I can design the workflow. So I'm going to remove this here again, and I'm going to connect it directly to the login. Actually, I need to connect it to the end. Oh, I'm moving it now. There you go. So I'm going to pick this, connected to the end, but I can adjust this and change this however I like to get a custom workflow without having to program anything yet. So I can just move these boxes and add boxes and change boxes to get the flow I want. Once I have this, I can start with the basically with the integration into the front end and with the integration into the back end. Now, for this video in particular, Descope has provided me with a GitHub repository of a sample application. So if you don't want to code anything, you can just Get into Descope, create your account, do whatever you want, and then you can just download this repository. You have to set it up properly, but basically that's it. And you have your Flask backend and your React frontend running and interacting together if you don't want to do any of the coding. Now we're going to actually do that for the React client because my channel is focused on backend, Python, data science, machine learning, not so much on front end. I'm not very experienced with it, and I think most of you guys are probably not interested in React, but we're still going to look at the code and explain, or I'm going to explain what's happening here. So what I want to do is I want to download the zip file for this repository just to get the React code. I'm going to save it on the desktop. I'm going to open this and I'm going to unpack the React client. I'm not gonna unpack the Python file or the Python server because this is what we're going to do ourselves. But what we're going to do now is we want to open up a command line. I also already have this development environment set up here. I want to create a new directory inside of my working directory that I'm going to call frontend. And then what I want to do, or actually I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to remove that again. I'm going to open up the command line. I'm going to navigate to the programming directory. And here now I want to say create -react -app frontend. Or I think, do I need to say npx create app? I think so, yeah. npx create app. Create React app frontend. So of course for this you're going to need to have npm installed, npx installed, so the full front end thing. But this is just some basic installation stuff that you need to take care of. What we want to do then is we want to install the Descope package. So there is a development kit for Descope that we're going to have to install in our project. I'm going to skip this installation here. I'm going to come back to you once it's done. All right, so the installation is now done. What we're going to do next is we're going to go into that front-end directory and we're going to install using npm. So npm install --safe at descope /react-sdk. This is going to install what we need in order to use Descope in our React frontend. And if you need some help with the setup, you can also go to the Descope quick start guide. You will find a link in the description down below, of course. You can just go here to client SDKs, web client, then social login, and then you can see everything that you need here. Now, one thing that's very awesome here is that your project ID that you need to specify, basically your authentication ID or key if you want, is already part of the documentation if you're logged in. So if I'm logged in right now, or because I'm logged in right now, I can see here in the documentation my correct key. This is not a sample key. This is what I have to enter into the project to make it work. So I can just copy this here, and then I'm going to go into PyCharm. The installation is hopefully done now. And what we want to do now is we want to replace the code of our newly created app with the code from the repository that you will find in the description down below. So where did I save it? Let me go to the desktop, I think. There you go. React client, source, and then app.js, index.js, open it up in Notepad. And here now, we're just going to copy, this is now the index.js, so we're going to just copy this here. I'm going to paste it here. And we're going to also have to import auth provider from this React SDK. The rest stays the same. And for the app, we're going to go into app.js. And we're going to basically, what do we have to replace? Almost everything, right? So I'm going to just copy all of this here until the point, where did I start? I started with curly brackets. So I'm going to copy all of this here. I'm going to replace this. And the basic idea here, and we need also some imports first. So we're going to import these three things here as well. You just copy paste from the file essentially, unless you want to build it from scratch. Then you can look into documentation and do it the way you like. But essentially what we're doing here is we're connecting to the backend. This is going to be our Flask backend. and we're passing the bearer token. And we get this token by authenticating ourselves here in the front end. So you can basically just clone the React app and use it to connect to the Python app. I'm going to show you what this looks like here. I'm going to just run this using npm start. And this should start the React application. And in this React application, you can see here, you're not logged in. One thing that I forgot to do is I need to provide the project ID, because otherwise it doesn't connect to my project. So I'm going to, let me just copy it again from the documentation. I'm going to copy this project ID. Of course, you have to copy your project ID. So there you go. And also, I think, do I have to put it here? I think not. So let's just see if this already works. So now it works. You can see we have this React app. It says you're not logged in. And I can continue with Google. I can just pick Neural 9 here. And now you can see hello Neural 9, my private component. And I can fetch private information, but since we don't have the Flask server running yet, this doesn't work yet. So this is the next thing that we want to do. We want to build the Flask server. This is now the front end. I can also log out. I can log in again. There you go. So you can see this works. So let me just move this here to the second screen. So I have my prepared code here. And what we want to do now is we want to create a second directory called backend. And here we want to implement a basic Python Flask server. So I'm going to say app.py. We're going to open up a command line. We're going to install, if you don't have it yet, Flask. We're going to also install Flask cross-origin request, so course. And we're going to also install Descope. I think Descope is the package for Python. Let me just see in the documentation if that's the case. Here we have now backend SDKs, social login, and Descope is the package, yes. So once we have all of this installed, we can build a simple Flask server or a Flask application. So we're going to say from Flask, import Flask with a capital F, JSONify, request, make response. Then from Flask cross-origin request, we want to import the cross-origin request. And then from Descope, we want to import refresh session token name, and Descope client. So I'm going to zoom out so that my camera is not blocking the code. Those are the imports. And what we're going to do next is we're going to say app equals Flask with underscore, name, underscore, and then we're going to say that cross-origin requests are going to be allowed by calling course on app. And then we're going to have just a simple public endpoint that we don't need authentication for. So I'm going to just say def index, and here we're going to just return hello world. This is public information. And then we're going to say app.route as a decorator above it to say that this is the default path. So if you just go to the basic server without specifying any custom path, this is what you're going to get here. Now we also want to have a protected section. So we want to say here app.route, and we want to call this, for example, here protected. The methods that we want to allow here are get. We want to say here protected underscore assets, for example. And we want to get the session token. So we want to say session token equals whatever we get from the request. So remember, in our front end, when we go to the front end section here again, in our app.js, we're sending a request to localhost/protected. So this is the endpoint here in Flask that we're targeting. And from this request, we want to now get the authorization. So we want to say request.headers. We want to get the authorization. We want to split it on white spaces, and we want to get the second element to get the actual token. And now what we want to do is we want to try to actually see if that token is valid by saying Descope client equals Descope client. The project ID is going to be still the same project ID. And then we're going to say JWT, so I think it was Java Web Token or JSON Web Token, I'm not sure, response equals Descope client dot validate session, and the session token is going to be the session token. So we basically authenticate, we see if the token that is provided in the request is actually valid, and if yes, we're going to print successful validation, and we're going to provide a response. The response is going to be make response. We're going to JSONify some secret information here. Actually, we have too many parentheses here. JSONify. We're going to have a message, and the message is going to point to a secret code. Descope rocks. Like this. All right, and then we also want to provide here maybe some stuff like severity. Severity of this message is, I don't know, danger. All right, so this is the response, and we also want to have a code in here, which is going to be the HTTP code 200, indicating that everything went right. And then we also want to have an accept block, but before the accept block, we actually want to return this response. So we want to first set the response header. Content type is going to be application/JSON, and then we want to return this response here. Now, for the exception, if it doesn't work well, so if the actual authentication process does not work well, what we want to do here is we want to say print validation failed, and we want to say response equals make response. We're going to again JSONify the whole thing. We're going to have a message. The message this time is going to be not allowed, and then we're going to say again severity is going to be danger. And the code this time is going to be 401, because this time we are not allowing the access. And then we can copy basically these two lines. And that is, when we indent this properly, that is basically it. We have this simple public endpoint. We have this protected endpoint. We get the token from the request header. We try to validate it. If it works, we return the secret message. Otherwise, we return not allowed. And all we need to do now is we need to say if __ name equals __ main __. Then we're going to say app.run on port 8080. So we can run this now. And I think we still have, what's the problem here? Module lib has no OpenSSL in all algorithms. Okay, it seems like for some reason I have to downgrade the cryptography package by saying pip install cryptography equal to 38.0.4. If that fixes the problem, that would be great. Let's see if that works. And now let's restart this again. Probably there is a dependency issue, but now it works. There you go. We have this localhost. This is the public information. If I just go to /protected, you're going to see that I don't have even an authorization here. So this fails immediately. But if I go now into my front-end application, I'm logged in. I can fetch the private information. You can see here secret code Descope rocks. Now, if I log out, I don't even have the possibility to send a request, but I would not be authorized to do it. So if I go again, continue, log into Neural 9, there you go, logged in, fetch private information, secret code Descope rocks, because my authentication, my front-end application is sending the authentication token to the backend. The backend is then confirming the validity, validating the session. Actually, we don't need this return value, by the way, because the thing is that this validate session function raises an exception if it goes wrong. So if it cannot validate the session, it's going to raise an exception, which is why we end up being here. But if everything works fine, we're going to get this response here with the secret code Descope rocks. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting a like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to check out Descope, the sponsor of this video. You will find them at the link in the description down below. Make sure to visit them, make sure to try out their product. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you much for watching. See you in the next video and bye.